Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, speakers. We are starting the next session, masterclass, transforming management education. We'll start the session in few minutes. Good afternoon, members. I would like to invite Mr. Krishnan, Business Head of Higher Education Segment, TCS ION. A small introduction about Mr. Krishnan. Mr. Krishnan is a business unit head for education at TCS ION. He carries rich experience across geographies in the US, Europe, and in India, working closely with Fortune 500 clients across industry verticals such as banking, telecom, manufacturing, retail, and education. Krishnan has held several leadership positions in strategy, business development, delivery, and product, and been part of TCS ION right from its inception. With a keen understanding of client priorities and a deep domain knowledge of key industries, he has conceptualized several new products, platforms, and services in the data consultancy service that have helped global clients reimagine their business and drive value creation of their consumers. Over to you, Mr. Krishnan.
Very kind introduction, and I take this opportunity to extend my warm welcome to all the decision makers, leaders from academia who have joined us today. It's a rather long session for a couple of hours, and we're going to talk about a topic that's very, very close to my heart because I'm a product of management education. So we're going to briefly touch upon the national education policy, what are some of the key tenets, and what is the opportunity that it gives to institutions such as yourselves. And post talking briefly on this, we want to, through this masterclass, derive a framework to help you look at your own business, your own priorities, and think through on how you would like to execute on your strategy through some of the learnings in this course. Moving on, we will have 4 breakout sessions, and that 4 breakout sessions is going to focus on learning, assessment, internship, and operations. And finally, I would like to leave you with certain messages that will help you, help guide your thinking. Before we move on to the first slide, which is talking about the emerging trends in management education and education sector in particular, I want to talk about 2 personal stories of mine, which I believe very well captures the student perspective and the corporate perspective when it comes to delivering quality management education. The first story is when I was a student doing my MBA many, many years back. And I'd done my engineering before I joined my management education. And I distinctly remember that during my course, there were 2 professors who were fortunate to be the best in their field who taught in my course. And I want to recall that experience. The first professor was a professor who was visiting us. He was a visiting faculty who used to teach in the top 10 Ivy League school in the world. And I don't want to name him, nor the subject that he taught. But he surprised all of us on the first day of the course by saying that there is a good news and a bad news. The good news is there's not going to be any assessment that I'm going to have as part of this course. And the bad news is I'm not going to use this course time to teach you anything on the subject. I'm going to give you the textbooks that you need to read. And the way we're going to run this course is that every class we're going to take up a case study from Harvard Business Review. And while there is not going to be any test, I'm going to grade you purely on your class participation, on how you think through the concepts and how you apply it, playing the role of the protagonist in the case, which is usually the CEO of the firm. The second professor, who was also happened to be a visiting faculty from one of the top 10 business schools in India, he had a very different philosophy. He said that, you don't have to really learn anything on your own. You just make sure you don't miss any of my classes. And he used to come and deliver lectures. It was the traditional model of, assessment. It had, assignments, case studies, class participation, of course, and then final semester assessment. But he used to come and, take us through the concepts through, slides after slides, and there were definite opportunity to interact. And both these professors were extremely good in their subjects. And I was a good student, so I did score, straight A's in both the subjects. But the story didn't end there. When I joined the corporate and when we were looking at, business problems, I've always found myself very comfortable in the course that was taught by the faculty from abroad. Because what I learned was not just the theory, but also application of the theory in a real-world context. And when faced with similar situation, it was much easier for me to apply. Even though I knew the theoretical concepts in the second subject that was taught by the Indian faculty from India, I always felt rustic and unsure of myself when I applied concepts that was learned, even though I was pretty sure about the fundamental basis on which my decisions were made. It was always, there always used to be that tentativeness in application of the theory that was learned. And the reason for me to tell this story is that, as leaders today from academia who have joined us as leaders from corporate, it's very important for us to ensure that our curriculums and the way we teach are in line with what the corporate expects and help students not just learn the theoretical, not just be theoretically sound, but also ensure that they are able to apply this and practice this application while at college, so that they are going to become much better professionals, because we owe it to ourselves to create future leaders in the country through strong management curriculum and education that we delivered through our institutes. So that was my first story. The second story is much more recent. TCS very recently, we contracted with one of the firms to deliver business simulation. And when I heard it, and this was a business simulation for our senior managers to undergo, where the managers are put through a fictional environment of a firm, and they have to play this simulation for 3 hours, where various aspects about their ability to make marketing, finance, HR decisions are tested, very similar to what one would experience in a B school. And I was quite curious to know about this firm, because I thought it might be a good idea to partner with them on other aspects of our business. And as I researched this firm, I was surprised to note that this was a firm that called themselves as a technology-first firm. And I was also surprised to note that they had not tied up with any of the management institutes, neither in India or globally, to create those simulations. And the simulations were pretty good, because they did go through a process to be selected. And the key message that I would like to, convey, or at least I took away from this experience, was that, just like there is an Amazon that disrupted the retail industry, or an Airbnb that disrupted the travel and transportation industry, or Uber or Ola disrupted the way transportation industry as we know it today, we are seeing a trend where the management education in the country is getting disrupted. We have seen a lot of startups, technology firms coming up with very innovative paradigm of learning, what traditionally should have been, a forte of management institutes or top management institutes in the country. And we are also seeing some of the management institutes restructuring themselves either as a separate entity that looks at online and technology-led education, or are introducing courses in partnership with other technology players or other management institutes. Because there is a huge market opening up, especially because of national education policy as well as the COVID times, where it is projected that almost 15 million new learners are going to join and get benefited from quality education, which today is possible to get access to through technology platforms. So Uberization of education is definitely on the cards. And the reason for telling this story was to indicate that there is a big opportunity for us to come together, understand the trends that are happening, and see what are the policy frameworks that are in place to truly transform education. So with those two brief notes, let me get started with some of the slides and talk through, starting with what are the emerging trends in the education sector. So as you can see, as I already mentioned through my examples, clearly there is an accelerated growth in adopting digital learning resources. Students today, millennials, are definitely looking at how do they get access to quality education and skills that they can apply on the job. And there is significant trajectory and flexibility to customize based on individual learner styles and learner preferences, and also adapting to the curriculum that is being conveyed. So technology allows that to happen. And that moves to the personalization of education. Today, based on the data that we have, a lot of the firms are looking at machine learning algorithms to create customized learning paths. I know long back we had the n is equal to 1, which is segment of 1. Today it's a reality through technology platforms, data analytics, and putting cloud leverage. Another area that always has been emerging is the collaborative learning style, and more than any other institute in any other domain, management institutes understand this, because primarily the focus of education as well as grading is on how well students are able to work in teams and collaborate with each other. And as I already indicated, the simulation-based gamified approach to teaching concepts and testing students in areas is gaining traction, not just in management education, but in the broader education industry. So these are some of the trends. Now let's look at some of the challenges that today we face as a country. One big challenge that I've seen is there is huge number of institutions in the country, more than 39,000 institutions. And the focus on outcome linkage is still not meeting the student expectation. And there are a lot of institutes which are focusing primarily on the academic rigor, but less and lesser focus is being paid to the outcome that is getting generated. The other big challenge that we find whenever it comes to technology adoption or anything for that matter is the lack of internet access. Still, it is underpenetrated. There's a lot of progress on this in the time of pandemic and even earlier than that, but still many parts of the country are still facing this challenge, which creates a hurdle in terms of many of the technology that is out there, but is still not accessible to the masses. So Ayush, you can animate the slide a little bit faster, if you don't mind. The other challenge that I have seen is that even though technology exists, management heads of institutions as well as the academia has been slow in its adoption because technology per se rapidly gets obsolete. So what is today a state-of-art technology gets obsolete very fast, and this is a challenge which takes a lot of time for heads of institution to evaluate the right technology. But once they evaluate and adopt, we have seen life cycles changing, ranging from almost 6 months to 9 months. So it's very important that you choose technology that is not just up to date, but also remains future-proof as you make these investments. The other area is the millennials' expectation. Today, everyone doesn't want to be taught, doesn't want to be coached, doesn't want to be told what is the right way and wrong way of doing, but they expect that they are guided. Just like the first professor that I spoke about, he never taught the subject. He was more like a coach and a mentor to help guide our thinking versus being preached to or being talked to by the second professor. So clearly the millennials' expectations are also that and they enjoy curriculums that are much more innovative, the pedagogy that is more innovative rather than being taught to. And finally, we do see that a lot of the students, enroll in programs, parents, enroll them in program, but we've seen there is always this challenge of completion rates. This is not true with the top tier schools, but if we look at scale, bringing scale to the impact that we want to create, clearly this is a big challenge. So with these challenges, I think the national education policy is very forward-looking. And I'm not going to preach on what is the national education policy. I'm sure all of you are well aware of the dimensions that it brings about. But I'm going to talk about 5 key dimensions of national education policy that bears an implication in terms of what we're going to talk through in this masterclass. The first implication is when it comes to learning. Clearly, the focus on multidisciplinary universities. It is said that the total number of institutes in India is going to come down from the 39,000 that exist today to about 15,000 because, many institutes are going to, merge or possibly not be there anymore, given the flux and also the focus on multidisciplinary education. We've already seen that there's a lot of flexibility of multiple entry and exit options that are being provided. Another thing is the policy gives a broad framework for global universities to set up, a shop in India and bring global education to India. When it comes to assessment, there is more focus that the policy lays down in terms of more continuous evaluation as opposed to, one size fit all approach. When it comes to internship and placement, clearly there is a lot that talks about both these dimensions, internship as well as outcome linkage. And when it comes to administration and technology, clearly the emphasis is on greater transparency, greater digitization, and adopt newer pedagogy like gamification to ensure that education is much more profound and meets the goals of quality throughout. So clearly there is enough in the national education policy, but while the policy definitely talks about multiple dimensions, the question that educational institutions continuously ask us in all our conversation is, okay, how do we take this, which is directionally very sound, and then create implementable roadmap? How do we think this through and create impact in our organization that can be felt by the students, that can be felt by the organization? And the next 2 slides, I want to draw a broad framework for you to think this through. The first framework is to focus. Yeah, if you can move to the next slide, please. Yeah. The first dimension of the framework is to focus on 4 key dimensions: speed, scale, security, and experience. And this is the first part of the framework where, can we move to the next slide? Who's controlling the slides? Ayush? Darshan, are you there?
Yes, sir, Krishnan. Ayush, can you please move to the next slide?
Yeah, the previous one. The slide 5. Okay, so as we get the slide on, so the way we want to look at this is we want to move away from cost quality focus to look at how do we do things at scale. Many institutions, today, quality institutions are, when I look at the total batch strength, it's somewhere between 700 to 1,000. In fact, the latest report shows that the average number of students per institute across these 39,000 institutions is in the range of 650. So we need to start looking at education, given the technology, platforms, and other things that are available today in much larger scale. So the quality education need not be restricted to a handful of students who are then, put through a very rigorous selection process. So a lot of people today, for example, write the CAT, but very few actually get an opportunity to experience quality education at the IIMs. So we want to break that, and this is a great opportunity to do that, both the NEP as well as the technology that is out there. The second thing, as we discussed, was to look at experience. Finally, whatever we do, we have to really look deeply on the student experience and the corporate experience. The corporate experience is, what would drive impact of the education that we are delivering in terms of meeting their expectation of employable talent, generating employable talent in areas that are in demand, and talent that is not just knowledgeable on the theoretical aspect, but also on the practical aspect. And we also want to look at the student experience, ensuring that students are enjoying management education. This is a great science. It definitely builds the leadership skills, gives them the tools that are going to be there with them for life. And hence we have to ensure that they are having an experience that is not straitjacketed. It's much more open, much more personalized to their needs and capability. Moving on, there are 5 key principles that I want to talk about that will help us implement all of this. The first is the phygital aspect of what we do. Today, with campuses shut, we never thought we'll be in this situation that COVID has created. But even after COVID, even after the vaccine, we do believe that still there is going to be a large number of students who would be happy to interact online or on the internet. So we are never going to, I believe, going back to the completely campus mode of education. There will be still certain parts that need to be delivered in a phygital model. The second very important aspect is the ecosystem aggregation. It's not a good idea when we look at transformation to try and do it all by yourself. It's actually a very bad idea, because trying to do everything by yourself is very costly, it's too risky, and that is not definitely the way the industry is moving. So if we look at it, there are definitely players. We need to start collaborating. For example, there are firms like us, TCS. We are very good in technology, but we might not be very good in management education, management science, the latest academic rigor when it comes to education. And hence, it is important for different players with varying strengths to collaborate, because there is always more value that we can create. 1 + 1 is not equal to 2. 1 + 1 can be 11 when it comes to synergy value that gets unlocked when like-minded firms come and collaborate and create the ecosystem. The third is the service delivery integration. So if we look at the student experience, what we find is that many firms are looking at it in a very siloed approach, right? We can't just look at, for example, a lot of firms just look at quality education. Yes, quality education is important. Without that, what are we doing really? But we can't just look at education in its silo. We have to look at the end-to-end. What is the outcome that we want to create? How do we collaborate better with the corporate, with the industry to ensure that our curriculum is staying in pace with what's happening, and we are producing talent that can, solve real-world challenges? How do we, look at and bring a systems view to what we do and our strategies? The fourth one is machine-first philosophy. Today, with the progress in artificial intelligence, machine learning, we have to embed technology in everything that we do. This is a clear expectation from students, clear expectation from corporates, and institutes who are able to understand the kind of technology out there and then able to take that and implement it in their specific use case will definitely see a huge difference in how they execute on management. And the last is, of course, self-learning systems, wherein which is the extension of the machine-first approach. We need to start looking at leveraging technology in a very whole new dimension, look at the data and create and modify and iterate our programs to stay ahead of time. So these are the broad 5 principles that I want to leave you with. And what we're going to do in the next half of our workshop for about an hour, spending 15 minutes, we're going to talk about, as I said, 4 key dimensions, starting with learning, moving to internship, then moving to assessment, and then finally operations, and look at what is the challenge and what are some of the possibilities that can help guide your decision making, applying some of these principles and continuously looking at as I mentioned in the previous slide, scale, speed, security, and finally, great experience. And finally, I will again come back and we'll talk about what are some of the 5-6 key takeaways from this session that you can take back to your institute and implement it, leveraging some of the things that we spoke in today's masterclass. With that, thank you. Back to you, Darshan, and we'll move to the next section of this masterclass. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Krishnan. With this, we move to the learning transformation. Over to you, Subhajit.
And thank you, Mr. Krishnan, for that wonderful insight. And good afternoon to all our respected speakers, panelists, and all our participants. So now, as Mr. Krishnan just concluded, that we will see one by one the four different transformation areas. So I'm starting with learning transformation. So first, we are going to talk about the need that we can identify, and obviously these are certain needs that all of you are aware of right now. And also, this need is also coming out from the National Education Policy 2020 that has been released just a few months back. So, what we are seeing for a long time in the education, because though there are several new things implemented in the education sector, but still in most of the areas, it's still running in a static mode, because for a long time, no major changes has happened, which is also going to come through this National Education Policy. So what we are seeing currently in most of the academic area, that means this is coming out from our interaction that we have with the people we are also taking into our company. As you know that TCS being the largest recruiter in the country itself. So we get to talk with a lot of new people, means every year and every session. So what we are seeing that, okay, this academic curriculum, what we have in the country in terms of management education as well as other education sectors, the curriculum is still is more or less academic oriented. By academic oriented, I mean to say is that it is definitely covering, it's a good curriculum, it is covering all the required concepts and everything. But when it comes to comparing with the requirement in the industry, it is falling a bit short. That's why in most of the reports that is coming out in different after these studies conducted by different corporate houses and other survey players, we see that learners across different domains in the country are still not marked as highly employable in most of the major cities, most of the major states and all. So what is lacking? That we can identify the lack here, that probably the academic curriculum needs to be more in sync with industry, what is required in the industry. So if there is a blend between academic curriculum and the requirement of the industry, that will probably make it a bit better, more holistic. Next, in most of the cases, what we see is that we are only talking about the theoretical concepts. I'm just drawing from what Mr. Krishnan articulated as the first story of his student life. From there also we can understand that most of the cases that if we talk about theory and if we make people understand about theory, still it is not going to help them when they are actually facing the challenge in a corporate, or they are trying to get into a job or something like that, or they even if they think about starting their own endeavors. So there is a lack of definite, or I should say there should be some more focus on experiential learning to enhance at least the employability quotient of the learner. Third is that hardly we see that our learners from different sectors are actually enjoying a continuous interaction with the peak practitioners from the industry. So what happens, only some of the students who are actually getting the opportunity to go for some sort of internship in the industry, they get a chance to interact with the industry leaders or the practitioners and get to know their viewpoints. And that also helps immensely into in shaping up their future career and all. But in most of the cases, we don't get this opportunity. So that is another point which we have identified as a need. Next, most of our curriculum, what we can see today is that it is actually a bit single dimensional. Means a student who is actually getting into, say, even in some of the management curriculum that we see in the country, it is bit single dimensional. Means after completing the degree, there is only one door open before the candidates. But if we can make it multidisciplinary so that they can actually choose between multiple fields and they have actually got enough knowledge on both the dimensions, that definitely is going to help them. And it is also one of the major aspect which is covered in National Education Policy. Next. Then this point already you people, means all the participants, you are actually aware of this particular point, that multiple entry exit system. So right now what happens, I get into a particular degree, even if there are, say, after say 1 year, completion of 1 year, even if I see that, okay, probably I am not finding myself enough comfortable with the future subjects which are coming up, or already what I have studied till now. But still there is a problem for me if I exit from the particular my education will remain incomplete. So, and also there could be several other problems that I may face, but still all of them will make the education incomplete. So probably this is one of the missing points again. And last and most importantly, in most of our courses and degrees, and as a whole, the education itself in the country in today's time is not enough focused with the outcome linkage. So, because as we understand, the goal of the learners or today's learner is to get into some education which will probably show them a very definite outcome. Either it will give them certain sort of skill endorsement, or it will give them direct employment, or it will enable them to start their own ventures, something like that. So outcome linkage is again a very important need that is there existing in the market. Now that we have identified at least a small list of need, there could be so much more, but still after identifying that how we can address this. So we have actually we have been working on this for a long time under the guidance of Mr. Krishnan, and a couple of the points that I just like to present before you, and most of these definitely are also known to you. Like the first thing, what to address this need, what we think is that, say, whenever we are actually framing a curriculum, right now what happens, it is actually framed by our esteemed academic professors. In some of the cases, they are also interacting with some of the key industry professionals, and on those cases, actually the curriculum is coming out beautifully. But in most of the cases, what we think is that still we are following up some legacy curriculum where it is not practically wholesome or catering to the need of the industry. So industry participation in curriculum framing is definitely one way to address that particular need, which can certainly bridge the gap between what is taught in the academia and what is actually needed in the industry. Then the second point, what we see is that most of our degrees which exist in the in our society today, they are very much they are legacy degrees in nature, and also basically so many things are packed into a degree, and it is not giving any sort of specialization to the learner. So if we can think of creating degrees with deep specialization in 2 areas or 3 areas at the most, it would definitely going to benefit the learners in a better way. Next, I'm sorry. Next, another thing is that we want to mention here that if a learner is getting a chance to continuously interact with the practitioners from the industry throughout their degree in each of the courses, definitely it will help them to understand what subject they are just now learning, what is the most significant part out of that particular subject, and when they complete their degree and go for a job from this particular subject, what they need to carry with them so that they can become readily deployable in a project and really become successful in future. Next, there is another thing that we all face, and you will probably face it more than us. Today, there is a dearth of very good or say same quality trainers across the country in every institute. In some of our institute, we have top-notch professors teaching, globally acclaimed professors. But unfortunately, there are certain institutes where the training quality probably is not that good. So definitely the people who are actually coming from those institutes, the learners who are coming from those institutes are already starting with a disadvantage when actually they are competing for any job or any competitive positions. So definitely if uniformity in training quality can be maintained by giving them an opportunity to learn from top academicians in the country, that is going to give them an immense benefit. Next, as Mr. Krishnan was saying, there is a definite need today to attract and actually go with the flow in a way that millennials demand. And the demand of the millennials, as we all know, that there's right now the screen time for them has increased immensely. So there is a need for them to actually learn in a anytime mode, in any place mode, and any device mode. So that has to be incorporated right now into our education. And also connected with the same point, they also expect, because right now millennials are more comfortable in learning things through social media. So right, just like an example, earlier what we used to do during our time of as a student, whenever we used to have certain doubts, we used to go to say a professor or a senior and just to ask them, please help me in solving this problem. But right now what happens, if the millennial is getting any problem, any doubt, they're just going to WhatsApp it to their learner group, and somebody from that learner group will actually come back with the answer. So inclusion of social learning format into the education is very much essential in today's world. Next is definitely we need to have programs with multiple entry and exit paths so that the learners can follow a definite learning path, and they should have the option even to exit from it with at least certain outcome after say year 1 or after 2 and after year 2 or after year 3. And also we need to enhance the weightage on experiential learning through hands-on activities with each course. Internship is another thing which should be there associated with each program offered to every student in the country, so that actually they get a real feel of working inside industries and working in projects before they actually go on and join any corporate or any industry. And also, as Mr. Kishan said already, that we need to move towards digital construct now more than ever. So obviously, the education has to be a blend of some self-paced learning in a digital format, then obviously certain lectures, then hands-on activities, and so on. And each of the program, whatever skill it is teaching, it has to be endorsed by industry, because that essentially gives a very big weightage to the CV of that learner. So skill endorsement from industry is another way to address this need. And also there is a need of making the profile of the learner visible to all the corporates present in that particular area or in that particular domain. Right now what happens, a student is actually getting a chance to place his or her profile before a very handful of corporates. But if we can actually create a system where we are actually making their profile visible before a large pool of corporate spanned across the country, it is definitely going to give them better opportunities and more opportunities. So these these are certain ways, in a way, we can actually connect the dots and address the need. Sorry. And what value it is going to create for stakeholders. So for industry, see, the basic need for industry, definitely they require a pool of readily deployable resources. And how? They should have a direct connect. This will actually give them a direct connect with the student during their academics. And while they are actually training people throughout academics, definitely it is going to cut down on the effort that is actually required post-hiring. And also, it will also give them a continuous pool of good talent, and they will be able to spot them in a very early phase, and they can develop them. Next, for academia, how it is going to give benefit. Academia is definitely, they want right now, it will give them a platform for industry collaboration, through which they can actually offer a curriculum which is befitting with the industry needs. Obviously, a technology to support the new age education delivery. And also, it will create a large pool of career opportunities and better career opportunities for their learners, domestically as well as globally. And third, how it is going to affect the student or give value to the student. They will also be able to access courses which are actually aligned with industry needs. They can learn from top academicians, which will ensure the uniformity of the education or training delivery. They will have industry interaction throughout their learning. They will actually know the subject by doing, not just reading. So they will have enough hands-on knowledge. They will have industry endorsement of their skill through their certificate or through their degree. And also they will get a big set of internship and job opportunities. So this is the value. This, if we address the need of the learners, so this is the value it is going to create for the key stakeholders. So with this, I'll hand it back to Darshan.
Yeah, thank you, Suvajit. Now I would like to introduce Love Chopra, our higher education domain consultant. Over to you, Love.
Thank you so much for a wonderful discussion on learning transformation. So if I talk about learning transformation, so internships also play an important role and are a significant part of learning journey of any of the management graduate. We want to reflect acquiring the industry relevant skills in the educational journey of any of the management graduate. It provides an exposure to the real world industry scenarios for the students who are undergoing their management studies, either in different fields or different specializations of management, which includes marketing, HR, finance, information technology, and many more. So in the recent times, due to the pandemic, the industry exposure during the internships has become quite questionable for the students. Thus, there is a strong need of location-independent internships for the management students, which could empower the students to acquire skills and become industry ready. The students should be able to undergo internships under the guidance of industry practitioners, which is supported by a structured and collaborative learning environment. So it is normally heard that the students don't get the right internship which is in line with their academic curriculum or the academic specialization. So if I take an example like if finance student does not get an opportunity for any to appear for an internship in any of the finance related organization or company, but at the end land up in some marketing company, which is entirely a misfit for them, and also hinders the students' performance and hinders the students to drive the output from their internships. So it is very important to revolutionize the entire process of internships by offering a wide pool of internships across trending domains being offered to by the leading corporates in the industry. which should be aligned with AICTE and UGC frameworks as well, and well acknowledged by the management institution. So that once a student undergo the internship, they are capable enough and they should get back to their institution to claim the academic credits upon the successful completion of their internships. So focus is to ensure a structured learning which defines the industry aligned curriculum that could help the students to learn before they are asked to work upon something. Normally it is seen that during internship duration, students are given some tasks which are not even taught to them during their internships, nor as a part of their academic curriculum. So such scenarios can be well managed by ensuring the industry aligned and structured internship curriculum is defined for the students, which could help them polish the skills and make them learn the skills before they are ready to implement and execute it. The another aspect of internship is effective interaction with the industry practitioners. As my colleague Suvajit was also mentioning about the industry practitioners being active in collaborating with the students for gaining better understanding and imparting better learning to the students. So mentors from the industry or corporates play a crucial role imparting the industry relevant skills to students who are undergoing internships. Thus, collaborative learning is the key to structured and experiential learning, if I say. Collaboration with industry mentors ensures the sharing of ideas, the business scenarios, and industrial insights as well, which not only provide the theoretical knowledge for the students, but also help them to provide hands-on exposure to the students while executing the industry projects. A management student have to undergo the internship project, which is evaluated on different performance matrices and further being submitted for claiming the academic credits. Performance tracking and evaluation helps in identifying the gaps in the student theoretical and the hands-on knowledge which can be worked upon to provide an enhanced internship transformation. So all these aspects, starting from internship being provided across trending domains and being aligned with industry curriculum and experiential learning being supported by industry experts, all these constitute and help towards the internship transformation and would anyways help a student to gain more understanding and enhance their skills, which would be a key focus for internship transformation in the educational journey of a student. Taking it back to Darshan, so that was all from the internship transformations and how the internships can be transformed for enhancing the student skills and their educational journey.
Yeah.
Over to you, Darshan, please.
Yeah. Before we move to the next section, I just want to give some context. Thanks, Love, to institution heads who are listening to this very key dimension. As Suvajit mentioned, when it comes to recruitment, if there are two equally strong candidates, one who is able to demonstrate experience of working in the corporate, solving real world challenges, versus somebody else who might not have that industry experience, clearly the candidate with that industry experience is going to gain an edge. And internship, as Suvajit said, as a component to deliver quality education needs to be looked at, right? And possibly I'm preaching to the choir, this is well known. But the challenge is twofold. The first is getting right quality internship is always been a challenge. Because if you look at it from a corporate standpoint, not many top corporates are providing enough opportunities to absorb, the millions of students who are undergoing management education in the country. So that's a big challenge. The second thing is what happens is after the student joins the corporate, right? The mentor, because they have a role to play in the organization, don't end up giving the required guidance because they don't have time. And the reason for that is not the lack of intent, but the lack of structure. So the most important component to solve this problem is to have a methodology to generate large number of internship, access to large number of internships. Second, have a structure to the program so that the mentors from the industry end up, paying a good amount of attention, because they don't need to go through the rigor of putting the process and structure together. The structure already exists, and that's going to increase the value of the collaboration. And one of the things that we have done is also to have an assistant mentor to support the real mentor, so that our top SMEs or top industry professionals can give that time for internship, but at the same time they have an assistant mentor taking care of other things, right? So we have more participation from leaders when it comes to quality internship. And one last dimension that Love has covered and also Suvajit has covered is we do find when we interact with students from the institutes that while they are coming from top institutes, they seem to lack some of the basic skill to apply that can solve the challenges that the internship project is all about. And hence, it's equally important to not just design good quality internship and with the right process, but also embed the learning so that students can use it to, revise the components that are required in order to apply in a real world setting. And there is a very good structure of learning and application as part of the internship program itself. So these are some of the points that I thought I will further emphasize in addition to the points that Love has already covered, just as food for thought for leaders who have joined us today to think this through and ensure that they get access for their students to large number of internship and make it as a core part of the pedagogy in order to transform on this dimension. So with that, back to you, Darshan.
Thanks, thanks, Krishnan. Thanks, Love. So yeah, with this, we would like to introduce Abhijit Dutt, our delivery head, who will cover assessments transformation. Yeah, over to you, Abhijit.
Darshan, am I audible?
Yes, Abhijit. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Krishnan, Love, and so we have so far got an insight into learning and internship. Now, education, as we all agree, is one of our is one space that has been severely disrupted. And with classrooms having moved online and professional courses having been left incomplete. So the next aspect that we will touch on is how to deal with the change of environment, to continue to look at the assessments and validation of these learnings that have since been structured into the new normal. So good afternoon, everyone who has joined us in this forum. I'm Abhijit Dutt. And I would like to spend next few minutes with all of you on this call, talking through the transformation that the validation of these learnings have had to go through, some of the challenges that we have all collectively faced, and some of the things that we are brainstorming into bringing in this journey of transformation. So as I was mentioning, that when the pandemic broke out and it became a reality that it is going to be more than just 2-3 weeks, and it is going to be far, far extending beyond the Easter, the concerns that came in from various educational institutes, heads of institutes, etc., that we were working with, and the noise that we heard essentially was that if classroom had come to a halt, would education necessarily follow suit? And it was something that was keeping all our educators and teachers awake through the night, because there were incomplete professional courses, their students had dispersed, gone back to their native locations. There were gaps in validation, that is, they have finished the courses, but the assessments have not taken place. If the theoretical assessments have taken place, then the practical assessments were stuck because the students were not available. And then you had the delays in the next academic session as a fallout of what was happening. But even if you were able to still manage a conduct of an assessment, how do you still ensure that the conduct of the assessment is safe, is fair, and is incident-free? And therefore, the students are not in any disadvantage or have any special advantage because of the change of the environment, the change of the approach, and the way that they were being tasked to take on the assessment. So let's move on to the next one, that if there was this dilemma, what were some of the ideas that were coming up? So making sure that we continue to elevate the institute's resilience and the brand while we go through this transformation and take care of our student and professional population. The first thing that everyone was looking at was, how do I find a partner who will give me a single window of service? Because I already have so many problems to deal with. How do I find somebody who can work with me to eliminate the physical presence of an office, physical presence of an environment, and give me an end-to-end execution opportunity to help me through this? Then there was the overcoming the issue of connectivity with the limited internet and network setup that we had, especially in the rural parts of the country. And is there an option that can be made available to us where the test material can be accessed and the portal can be accessed even if there is low to no network connectivity? Third aspect that they had to adapt to, or we all have to adapt to in the new normal, was that how do we conduct this assessment where it is anywhere, anytime assessment? So whether it is remote assessment, whether it is a physical test center, how do we make sure that the setup that we have, whether it is remote from the comfort of the home, or people are taking the trouble of coming to the test center, that the partner is in complete compliance with the social distancing norms, avoiding any potential contamination. And there are enough and more technology interventions to make sure that AI, artificial intelligence, is supporting us through this. Before we get to the next point, one more important aspect that came up is, very interestingly, that we had come to accept that fingerprint was and photograph capture was given in terms of biometric verification or capture of the candidate. Now, with a touch-free environment, if you did not have biometrics, if you did not have left fingerprints that you could take because of possible potential contamination, how do you continue to capture candidate identity and make sure that it is verified? So in came the alternative of iris capture, something that was earlier restricted to the army, now moved into the mainstream, into civil life, where iris capture became as normal as biometric capture. And then as we get into the malpractice section, we will talk about it, how that iris capture can also be extended into continued verification along with the photograph in the course of the exam. Talking about malpractice, much as we hate it, we cannot ignore it. Cheating techniques have evolved at a very rapid pace, and it has intervened and interrupted every attempt that has been made to conduct a free and fair and democratized execution of examination. Now, so to keep up with the so-called pace of malpractice interruption, we had to get innovative. The industry had to get innovative in terms of interventions to stop such malpractice and make sure that they are prevented and stopped at the door itself. So things like copying trend, including, with the power of artificial intelligence, to figure out that if students sitting side by side or students in a specific lab, in a specific test center, are actually copying from each other. How do you read what is getting captured as responses from the candidate in the course of the exam is actually giving us indication of such a malpractice happening. Live CCTV, direct streaming from the test center into the central command center, so that you almost replicate the situation of being there at that time as if an invigilator walking the floor, to be able to see beyond what the invigilator is doing, to identify any collusion, to identify any kind of malpractice that is happening, even with people at the test centers. Then you have webcams now being installed at every computer node, not only at home for remote assessment, but also at the test centers, so that the photograph that has been captured at the entrance of the candidate walking into the test center, that photograph can be continuously compared with the person's photograph sitting at the for giving the exam, making sure and ensuring that it is the same person who logged in, who was assigned that seat, is actually sitting in that seat and giving the exam, and it is not somebody else. Making sure that there are set times to complete the assessment. The questions and the options are both randomized, so that two people sitting side by side do not have the same sequence of questions, and within the questions they don't have the same sequence of options. So there is absolutely a deterrent to somehow convey to a friend in that lab or sitting next to you, to make sure that to kind of prevent any communication. The randomization of seating, to make sure that even if 5 friends walking together and give their registration, there is no way that those 5 friends are going to sit next to each other in a lab. They are going to be randomly distributed, making sure that they're not together and distributed well enough so that they cannot access or reach each other during the course of the exam. So these are some of the ideas that are coming up, and there are many more. Time permitting, it can be a subject by itself that we can discuss at length. Having addressed this, then comes the aspect of question paper and response security. How do we ensure that if you are electronically transmitting question papers, if you are distributing question papers electronically, and retrieving the responses from the candidates electronically, the security of that question paper and that candidate's response remain of paramount significance, and therefore there is absolutely no way that anything in that content can be tampered with. Even so, that even if you know the password, if somehow you figure out the password, the encryption is so rigorous that any change you make in that question paper or in the response will reflect in the data center, where the hashtag will not or hash algorithm will not match, and it will clearly indicate that the integrity has been compromised of the response or of the question paper. So, and at the same time, you have people dispersed in various locations, authors dispersed in various locations. How do you make sure that all of these answers or questions can be written up electronically into the system from various locations, still get collated into one question paper? Then we come to the aspect of phygital assessment. Okay, you've taken care of the theoretical part of it. What about the physical test part of it? Whether it's a skill test, whether it's a word test, writing test, whatever that series of combination of examination content would be, how would you ensure that a physical assessment also takes place? So hence the powerful deployment of phygital assessment, where the physical and the digital assessments combine to make sure that the entire composition of the question paper and the assessment remains intact, where the physical part of it can even be evaluated post the theoretical examination by uploading videos of the physical aspects, and that video getting remotely reviewed and evaluated by a set of evaluators. Last but not the least, we have everything, but today this all maybe tenders or addresses a population of a semester exam for 600, 700, 1000. But what if we wanted to do an assessment of 1.25 crores or 1 crore plus candidates? So do we have a partner who is able to scale up, whether it's a medium, a large, or a very large candidate base, that you have the same set of security, the same set of experience, the same set of confidence across multiple test centers, multiple candidates, multiple evaluators, and exam functionaries, so that you are able to give the same confidence back to the education institution or the recruiting body. And therefore, in a sense, as I mentioned, that how do we make sure that the democratized process is available to the entire professional young generation who, without discrimination of location, physical disability, and the level of education that they're trying to pursue, that there is a system, there is a partner, there is a platform that is able to support. Now, the entire landscape of assessment is also trying to keep up with this change. So while there continues to be pen and paper, there continues to be OMR, there continues to be a desktop, and there's now been recent introductions of portable devices on which you can change the assessments and take assessments. The type of assessment you can take is also evolving. Today, you have something called adaptive testing. That means that your question paper or set of questions that a candidate will face will come up randomly depending on his or her answers to the previous question. Now, that is something that earlier was not possible in an electronic environment. Now it is. That the algorithm and the logic that the software is running actually takes into account the responses from the customer and throws in the next set of questions depending on his response. Handwritten and drawing responses. So if you have something, an engineering drawing, or you have a hand drawing that has been done by the candidate, how do you electronically convert that and upload it and make it available to evaluators to be evaluated electronically remotely? What if you have an MCQ and a subjective? Can you combine the two? Is a question. Now that is also getting addressed with a setup that allows a candidate in the same center, in the same environment, to appear for MCQ and appear for subjective questions back to back, upload the answers, and make it available for evaluators. One electronically getting evaluated, the other getting manually evaluated, so to speak, on the system by the evaluator. Now there are different age groups who are doing the assessment, right from kindergarten to class 12 to beyond. And therefore, how do you simulate some of this and make it more interesting by gamification of assessment? Now, this is something that earlier was something quite unknown, and that it will come into mainstream education was something perhaps never conceptualized until now. But now it is becoming an evident part of to create more interest, to make sure that the assessments also take place while the interest continues to be there, especially with the younger generation. You don't have internet, you can still take an assessment. That is a possibility. Transcribers, you can dictate your answer and it can get captured as text. That is also can be assessed. You can have timed sections that you can take a question only within so many seconds, after which it gets locked. So there is no question of going back and forth, having a second thought, etc. So that can be also an evaluation. There is also a possibility that if you are, and this today is restricted to English, but if you are giving your responses in English, that they can be auto-marked. So you don't physically need an evaluator to sit across a screen and manually kind of evaluate it. If you set the answers or if you build in the answers along with the questions, so that as soon as they are responded to, they can get evaluated. And a significant part of today's corporate recruitment for the managerial, for the management students also, which we have become of significance, is psychometric testing. So that too is today possible, does not necessarily have to be with pen and paper, can also be done electronically. And all of this catered to some 50 plus types of question types, whether it is multiple choice, whether it is multiple select, whether it is fill in the blanks, whether it is sequence questions, whether it is video questions, whether it is audio questions. So they are all different types and combinations that an education institute can pick and choose from to make the assessment not only effective, but also interesting for people or candidates or students who partake in it. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is how the face of assessment, the landscape of assessment is fast changing and adapting to the new normal. Newer ideas are coming in, newer solutions are being implemented. Times are exciting as there's never a dull moment that is there in this the world of education. Thank you so much for your patient listening. Over to you, Darshan.
Yeah, thanks, Abhijit. Now over to Love to cover operations transformation.
So with all the transformations that we talked about regarding the learning transformation, internship transformation, and assessment transformation, it is equally important for an institution to drive the operational excellence out of their institutional processes. And these processes define the institutional resilience and drive the brand value for any of the management institution, if I say. Can we have the next slide? So if I talk about a few of the institutional needs, which emerges out for driving the operational transformation for any of the education institution, starting with an organized interaction among the stakeholders. There is a strong institutional need to enhance the stakeholder communication and collaboration. It not only includes the interaction between the students with the faculties or faculties from the student, but also between the peer students. As normally in management institution, you normally see the students have to undergo number of group activities and group assessments and have to get involved in number of discussions together. But considering the current situation in which the students are at their natives and there is no physical classrooms which can enable the collaboration, there is a strong need of collaborative platforms that ensures the peer interaction through various modes in which they can share their ideas, they can share some insights about their projects and insights about their group activities. They can collaborate through online learning platforms as well. Normally, in any management institution as well, there are a number of departments, like marketing departments are there, finance departments, and so on. And it is very necessary for any of the management institution to ensure a standard process being incorporated across all the departments for gaining a departmental as well as a holistic picture of the entire institutional processes. So this calls for the need of bringing about the standardization of institutional processes. So if we take an example of evaluating a student of two different specializations, one is marketing and other for finance. So institutions should try to have a standard processes of evaluating the students even from the different specializations so as to maintain standard result processing and providing the better opportunities and equal opportunities to all the students despite of their different specializations. Moreover, as we also explained about the outcome linkage, so defining of the educational outcomes for a directional curriculum comes out to be a major institutional need, since each of the core specialization or management program in a management institution have a defined set of outcomes, which clearly defines that what is essential for all the students to be able to do successfully at the end of their learning and undergoing that course or a program. Thus, defining the course or program outcomes emerges to be an integral part for any of the management faculty or curriculum development teams to design the entire curriculum, which would anyways help the institution as well as the students to gain and track the performances and derive the outcomes from the programs and the courses they have studied throughout. Moreover, there is a strong need of being compliant to accrediting bodies, as compliance to NBA, NAAC, these define the performance parameters. These are the performance parameters for any of the educational institutions. NBA accreditations, NAAC accreditation, if I talk about, is mandatory for all the higher learning institutes in India. And not only NAAC accredited universities in India are eligible, they are also get eligible for the UGC grants as well. As NAAC accreditation determines the quality of the institute in terms of their education, their infrastructure, their research, training, and learning capability. Whereas on the other hand, NBA accreditation assures that the graduate of a course accredited by NBA possesses enough academic background for going ahead with a professional career in management. So institutions with NBA and top NAAC grades are most sought after institutes for students who are pursuing higher education, particularly in the management industry. The another institutional needs come out to be an effective system to track the student as well as the faculty performance and help them to enhance their performances throughout. Since faculties and students are the key to operational transformation in management institutions, students have to undergo a number of live projects, industrial projects also, and develop industry relevant skills under the guidance of their academic mentors, which require an effective tool for tracking their performances and provide guidance throughout. Similarly, there are a number of research scholars who are also part of the management institution and are conducting some lectures for the students. Tracking of their performance on various parameters comes out to be a crucial part for defining the career path of those scholars as well. Moreover, despite of all the processes that we talked about, the actionable data is very important for the higher management or the decision makers to make informed decisions. So if I take an example of two students or number of students in a particular course or a batch being evaluated. So this actionable data is much more required to make decisions that which particular student should be provided with specialized coaching so as to better gain the insights and polish their skills so that he or she can match the competence of the other students. So such type of analytics and actionable data is required for the higher management to improve the performance of the students, improve the performance of the faculties, and for the entire institution. Moving on to the next slide. As we talked about the institutional needs, so for the operational transformation, there are a number of parameters which define the institutional excellence as well as the student excellence. Starting with the institution accreditation, so in order to ensure operational transformation, NBA and NAAC are the institutional performance parameters which can be achieved through structured and collaborative learning being imparted in any of the management institutions. So as per the Bloom's taxonomy as well, there are three domains of learning: cognitive, that is knowledge, affective, and psychomotor domains. Through defined and structured learning methodologies, students can be made to follow a particular curriculum in order to acquire the understanding and domain-specific knowledge, which can be supported with a collaborative learning approach as well. Their students can be made to share their ideas and debate on few topics, post their views, which can in turn help the other students broaden their perceptions and broaden their perspective. So in this way, a digital interactive environment can be created, enabling the students to learn and help their peers and being overlooked and guided by the faculties in an institution. In view of the structured and collaborative learning being imparted, there is a wide scope for the management institutions to step towards offering online degree programs, thereby imparting education through a structured and collaborating learning methodologies, enabling students to appear from their native places. And this structured and collaborative learning is further supported by choice-based credit system, which is basically a cafeteria approach being offered to the students, enabling them to opt for subjects which are of prime interest to them and which are in line with their future aspirations and goals. So as I said, it is something cafeteria approach. So if it allows a student to select from a bunch of courses and the subjects being offered by the management institution and create a package for them for a particular semester or for the entire academic curriculum, which are of their prime interest and would also help them to achieve their future aspirations. Suppose there are n number of students of the same batch. Thus, this choice-based credit system gives the flexibility to the management students to select the core or skill-based electives along with the mandatory subjects being given by the institution and learn to the best of their interest and capability. So all this will be an impression for outcome-based education. Today, many of the institutions must be imparting outcome-based education, but without offering choice-based credit system. But that would not yield the positive outcomes, as the students are normally being forced to study the subject which are of no interest to them. The collaborative learning accomplished with the choice-based credit system results in outcome-based education, which an institution should target for. This will result in focused learning and skill development for the management students. And in order to keep a track of the level of education being imparted, the analytics of the student performance is, as I said, is of the prime importance and can encourage the institution to make informed decisions. If I talk about the analysis of the student outcome, provide an opportunity for the institutions to ensure the students are getting the right exposure at the right time and they are getting the right learning, which is enhancing their skills and polishing their skills and thereby increasing their employability quotient in the market. Moreover, it will also encourage the students to keep a track of their performances, and also institutions can identify the key skill areas which needs attention and take decision for providing the personalized coaching, as I said, to the students as well. So all these components linking each other would result in an operational transformation for any of the institution, and which is basically a key towards an institutional excellence for any of the management institution. So this was all from the operational transformation and how it can be derived through it. Moving it back to Darshan. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Love. So we'll be just concluding in a few minutes. So if you have any questions, please do post your questions in the Q&A window. We will take it up shortly. So now over to Krishnan for the concluding remarks. Yeah, over to you, Krishnan.
Yeah. So thanks to everyone for a patient hearing. We spoke about 4 dimensions of transformation, and what I thought it is important in a long session like this is to leave you with some food for thought. So if we distill all what we have spoken and come up with some actionable next steps, what would that be? and I have summarized it in a single slide based on conversations with thousands of institutes over the last 9 months. We do run one-on-one consultative discussions with our partners, because the problem that everyone wants is, okay, what is the quick fix, right? But there is no quick fix when it comes to transformation. Transformation is a journey, and the worst thing that we can do is offer a solution that does not fit with an institute's current maturity, both in terms of people, processes, or technology. So it is very important to understand each of the institution's current maturity levels, and then devise strategies that will help them start on a path to transformation. As I said, transformation is a journey. But having said that, I would still like to hazard a set of recommendations that from all of these conversations seem to be the best way forward for institutions. The first and the most important recommendation, and since the audience here are all heads of institutions, management institutions in particular, so the most important part is to invest, or at least look at setting up a separate strategic business unit within your organization that focuses on digital learning. Some of the IIMs have set it up. Many of the other IIMs have started on this path by offering quality courses online. And I believe this is an area that every institute, at least in the management space, should set it up and look at expanding their student base to not just the traditional form of admission, but to a larger set of students across the country, thereby democratizing access to quality education that you have been championing all these years. And today, as we've been talking about through this masterclass, technology exists. Today, the cloud is the new ERP, cloud is the new campus, and campus boundaries have always been blurring, and possibly in the COVID, it has blurred to a significant extent. And it is important for every institution to come forward and embrace technology and put their campus on the cloud. One of the key things that I would like to caution you is when it comes to technology evaluation, I've seen many institutions get into this analysis by paralysis by starting to question and compare one functionality versus another. There are a lot of vendors in the market, each brings its own unique strength and weakness, but the most important few dimensions that you should not compromise on is look for a partner who does it completely in a managed services model. Like Abhijit mentioned, it's not just about the technology. There's always, some technology is better than the other. But the more important is, will that technology be implemented, and would you see value and impact in your organization? That's a very important consideration. It's like, missing the forest for the trees, because if you don't give a large weightage to that parameter, what could potentially happen is you might get maybe a solution at 1/10 the cost or 1/5 the cost, but end up not implementing any of it. Thereby, your return on investment is zero. And that risk, even if it is, say, 10% multiplied by that risk, is still a very large risk in a commitment that you're making. And it's not just a commitment of money, it is a commitment of time, commitment in terms of brand impact. So those are much more harder to measure. And hence, I would definitely recommend that you give a lot of weightage in terms of the risk of getting the project implemented, and what is the percentage risk, and does your partner, is he or she going to stay the course till the impact is felt and the benefit is got from those investments. The other aspect about any kind of technology is we have more than 1 billion people on many of the social networking sites globally. The thing that attracts them to these sites is social learning pedagogy and the social interactiveness of these platforms. So whatever one does, it is very important to look at the technology from the end user, end student perspective. Is it something that is going to take a lot of effort to get the organizations to adopt, and not just the student, but also the faculty. One of the transformations that comes to mind is what we did in TCS. We went away from a learning management system that was one of the best in the world to the TCS Ion platform. And what we did in this transformation journey is what used to take maybe a few months to create new programs, new learning programs. We completely changed the paradigm. Instead of depending on external vendors to create new programs, we gave the empowerment to our own internal SMEs and faculties so that they can curate courses and create programs on the fly. And what used to take 3-4 months to develop got developed in a matter of weeks and at minimal cost to the organization, because here is the faculty all creating their own courses. So these are the kind of user experience that you need to think through. So look at technology that will give your faculty much more empowerment and give them a wide array of tools to experiment with and create learning interventions. Because come to think of it, the faculty knows what and how a particular subject has to be taught, and hence need to be equally empowered with the tools to create that courses with minimal effort and be given the flexibility rather than having a straight-jacketed way of teaching that curriculum, which will only lead to faculty resistance and unsuccessful adoption of technology in your institute. Same is the case with student learning or student experience. It is equally important to choose technology which will get easily adopted. Does the technology, for example, have a lot of social enablers? Can we, instead of having the faculty teach subject and put learning on the and conduct virtual learning through various VC platforms, can we have the faculty instead ask questions where the students start, either debating it virtually or, create a poll virtually or create, interaction virtually, that then you can use to measure the participation and interaction, and then use that data to measure the student effectiveness and the faculty effectiveness. So these are things that is not just an idea, these are possible through technology, and hence the first thing is to look at a digital first revamp of the technology at your institute and see how you can not just go paperless, but also create a transformation in various engagements with your faculty, management to faculty, faculty to student, student to faculty, and create a much more cloud-first model of your institute, which will not only make your institute more relevant to your current student, but also make it much more relevant to the large majority of students today who are going to join as pure online or pure digital-only universities. The second key dimension that I would strongly recommend is you look at, like Abhijit mentioned, there are a lot of platforms, a lot of methodologies to select the top talent, and we need to do it at scale. And you need to, the top institutes, why are they the top institute? Because they get top talent. That's one of the criteria, apart from the quality education that happens after the talent joins. So if you can get access to top talent and create learning programs that match up to the talent's capability, then you have a winning product that you can then use to ensure that the transformation and investments that you're putting in place have the highest, return on investment. And it is also very important, as we discussed during the masterclass, to create employable talent, create courses that are very relevant, that the industry wants, and continuously upskill your talent after they join your institute. And an area that I want to definitely touch upon on this dimension is the fact that today there is lockdown, a lot of the students are back at home, but still this is a very good opportunity for you to look at partners who have a network across the country and ensure that the students are taking assessment seriously, come to a partner center and run a completely managed services proctored assessment to ensure that the sanctity of the learning that is happening and the seriousness of an assessment is not getting deprioritized. We have seen a lot of cases where, institute runs a remote assessment, or even I've heard a model where, institute just sends a question paper on email and the students are supposed to answer it, write it and email it back, or possibly mail it back to the institute. But these are models that are not the right model, because it brings to question the credibility of the whole process, the sanctity of the whole assessment. And I definitely want to take this opportunity to assure you that technology exists in a very attractive commercial, which will protect your institutional credibility. You don't have to cut corners or make these wrong choices. There exist models. There are a lot of institutions who are adopting it, which ensures that you protect your institution brand always. Because the last thing you want is your students are not taking things seriously and going through the entire process and they end up learning nothing. And then it's all going to come out when they come to the corporate or sit for an interview, where they're unable to, match up to the talent or the institutes where, things were taken seriously and they embrace technology and ensure that assessments are done with the right rigor. And it is an opportunity for the students to, test their knowledge and apply it and prepare themselves for the ultimate interview that happens towards the end of the program. The last and the most important thing, in fact, this is the most important thing, that's why I wanted to keep it the last point, is one has to look at industry trending courses. Today, a straight-jacketed management education, a generalized management education is definitely not enough. We have seen a lot of the top institutes coming up with programs on AI, machine learning. Today, the role of technology is not just restricted to the CIO's office. Technology is everyone's priority, right from the CEO to the CMO to the CFO, and hence as institutions that produce quality management talent, you have to embrace courses that are trending and contextualize it to what a management student should know. So they don't need to know the coding part, but they definitely need to know the application orientation and the business case that gets created. And this is a new area, and hence it is very important to tie up with the corporate and design courses, where the corporate takes a lead role in designing this program. We have seen many institutions, doing it on their own without much corporate involvement. But finally, the same institutes, when they come, to showcase their talent, and when we actually evaluate the talent that these pure online programs produce, we do find there is a significant gap between our expectation and the student's capability. And it is not the fault of the institute or the student. It is just that, as Suvajit mentioned, you have to involve the industry much early in both curriculum design and curriculum delivery. The best SMEs are the ones who work in real world challenges day on day on, some of these trending courses, and they are the best teachers. And of course, if we can combine the contextual knowledge, the practical implementation of concepts with the strong academic foundation, you have a winning combination. And the crux of this is that important to identify industry partners in your curriculum design and engage with them and create opportunities for them to continuously evaluate your students. Because as we create and implement these programs, it is also an opportunity, as Suvajit mentioned, for the industry to evaluate students and take a proactive role in shaping not just their academic knowledge, but their career later on when they come to the recruitment season. So we need to start looking at this early, so that towards the end of the program, students not just have the theoretical knowledge, not just know how to apply it, but also have developed a set of rich networks that is going to give them a head start in their career. So with that, thanks a lot. As I said, we are very happy to that you attended this masterclass. Clearly, it shows that we have significant interest in the market for how management education can be transformed. I want to thank CII for giving us the opportunity. And as a special gesture, I would be happy for institutions to reach out one-on-one, and we could set up a one-on-one consultation exercise for you, where we understand your priorities and see how we can help you navigate not just the crisis, but also participate in the larger opportunity. And as I said, it's not just the opportunity and the business potential. It is really heartening and a responsibility for all of us to create future leaders in India. And management science, as I begin this masterclass, is very close to my heart. I believe it's a great to be in the management science or management teaching business, and definitely look forward to even post this masterclass interacting with all of you and see how we can be relevant and together create this transformation in the industry. Thank you. Back to you, Darshan.
Thank you, Krishnan. We will just open up a small poll. Request the audience to take the poll. We are open for Q&A. So if you can please post your questions in the Q&A window. I see very minimal questions. So if there are any questions to the TCS ION team, please do post your questions in the Q&A window.
Dear participants, request you post your questions in the Q&A box, and it will be answered by the TCS expert. Dear participants, the polling has been initiated.
Yeah, I think we have a question from Chaya Kubal. The question is, internships are mainly available in technical job roles. Why not for non-technical job roles in service sector as well by the industry?
No, I think I can take that question, and or Love, you want to go ahead?
Please, Krishan, you.
Yeah, so as I understand the question, why not in management science? I think that's precisely what we also believe as part of. It's a key component, and definitely, as I said, the internship is we have to look at it much more holistically. On one hand, you have corporates and people who work in corporates who are busy on day-to-day job. They have very minimal time for internship, and even when they agree for an internship, they don't give the quality time. And the problem is that of structured intervention that will help the corporates, SMEs to spend quality time in mentoring students. And it is also important from an academic institution standpoint that these internship programs have the right guidance of the faculty. We do see a lot of the students who join us for internship don't seem to have access to faculty or access to guidance. So it's a two-way problem. On one hand, on the corporate side, there is lack of time. On the other hand, the structure is missing in this whole process. And I might add that today technology exists. In fact, TCS ION, we ourselves have taken a proactive step in solving this problem called the remote internship opportunity that we have come up with by collating internship, putting it through a structure, creating the mentors to help the actual subject matter experts save time for the subject matter experts, and also combine the internship with the learning, which is a key dimension to ensure that the students are able to solve problems, especially when they didn't have either access to their own academic mentors back in college, or they seem to not have the theoretical grounding required to solve the problem. So these are the areas where we can work together to ensure that students are getting top-notch internship, and it becomes a core part of their education.
Thanks, Krishan. So the next question we have is from Sheetal Kumar. The question is, they have a lab with a corporate setup in their college with a huge investment, but the college is lacking students, even with lots of effort in terms of advertisements and webinars. They are not getting a good response. So how the question is, how can they overcome this marketing problem? But yeah, it's kind of out of our kind of scope of this masterclass. But yeah, this question came up. I thought let me just pose it if we can have some innovative solutions to this institute.
Yeah. So when we looked at the marketing problem, this is something that we also face. We start looking at every problem as a marketing problem. But my only, even though I don't know the complete situation, is to look at it a little bit more holistically, right from the design of the curriculum, design of the outcome link, and also the partnerships that you're setting up. For example, a lot of the firms that today partner with us, TCS Ion, they invariably get access to validation of the quality and trust that forms the DNA of our organization. Because we are very serious about whatever we do. We carefully evaluate every partnership that we get into. And once we get into a partnership, we make sure that it is very successful. And that commitment obviously gets extended to the brand and gets extended as a promise to the market. And as I said, we are very serious about ensuring that the students are benefiting at the end of the day, and in interventions that are valuable to the corporates. And another part of this marketing problem is also, what is the demand from corporates for the talent? So one of the design principles that we have used when we work with institutions or create new courses is we start with the first question is not what programs can we launch. The first question is, what is the problem today for recruiters when they search for talent? Why is it a problem? What kind of programs will ensure will solve the problem? And then we get into the design, and then we get into the partnership, then we get into the investments. So it is always the corporate viewpoint first and move backward. And probably this is easier for us to think because we are one of India's largest recruiters. We are always thinking of, how do we hire the best talent? How do we ensure that? And we are now slowly extending that thinking into downstream to see that we continuously look at building the talent pool and measuring the talent pool and engaging with institutions to ensure that their curriculum is, up to mark, and then creating the ecosystem of partners. Like Suvajit mentioned, we do realize that a lot of the institutions today might not have access to good quality faculty. It is tough. One of the heads of institution mentioned that, he sent one of his faculty for training, and the faculty then quit and joined the corporate. Possibly he spoke about artificial intelligence or one of the, business 4.0 areas. So, availability of quality faculty is always going to be a challenge. And hence, the most important thing is the right partnership, the right design of the curriculum. Always start with, okay, what is in it a corporate? How am I going to place these students? And then I think all the elements will get set up automatically. And of course, finally, we have to come and address the marketing issue. And again, if you set the right partnership, design the right curriculum, and focus on delivering value, I think the rest of the things just fall in place. Many times, we ourselves in our program, we don't do a lot of marketing and branding because we want to ensure that we deliver the value, and that value that we deliver is the true marketing that we do for our programs. And I know I might have not answered your question fully, but as I mentioned, everybody who has participated, I invite you for a one-on-one consultation exercise. We can understand a little bit more on the exact problem, and then we can together work out, exchange notes, and work out a solution that best fits your organization needs.
Yeah, thanks, Krishnan. So if the audience has any more questions, please do post in the Q&A window. We are open for questions. As Krishnan mentioned, we are happy to plan one-on-one consultative sessions. You can write to us at our email ID, inquiry.tcsion@tcs.com, and we'll be happy to plan these one-on-one consultative sessions with institutes. Any more questions from the audience? Yeah, I think we have a question from Jyoti. So basically, the question is, how can we get internship opportunities in TCS or any other company?
Yeah, I think you'll have to write. You can just write mail to enquiry@.tcsion, and we'll take up that specific query. But as I mentioned, we have launched a remote internship, which is a structured internship model that we are offering to institutions who are willing to partner with us and provide assured internship in a structured way, which includes a learning program with mentors from the industry participating. There is a lead mentor, and then there are support mentors to ensure that the bandwidth of top SMEs are protected. And we want to, we are seeing very strong traction amongst the institutes, and a lot of the success stories are also available from a student and institute perspective. But this requires a much more detailed interaction on what your specific institutional needs are, and then we can ensure that we are able to help you get access to this set of internship opportunities that we have put together.
Yeah, thanks, Krishnan. I think we'll take one last question. So the question is, we spoke about outcome-based learning. So in that regard, does the TCS iON offer any courses or certifications?
Can you just repeat that question, Darshan?
Yeah, Krishnan. So we spoke about outcome-based learning in our slide. The question is, does TCS iON offer any such outcome-based learning certification courses or programs?
Sure. So Vijit, you want to take it up?
So definitely we have several such learning programs, which is particularly created keeping in focus that outcome-based learning thing. And this outcome is not only related to jobs and all, but it is also, as I was explaining during my presentation, and Mr. Krishnan also touched upon that particular point a couple of times, that outcome we see as a combination of multiple things. So first outcome is definitely having a chance to interact with the real industry practitioners throughout the learning journey. As a second outcome, we always see it like whatever we are actually, or whatever the learners are learning, they are actually getting endorsement of the skill from the industry as again another learning outcome. And also we try to integrate internship along with the learning to give them a real project development kind of a feel during their learning as an outcome linkage again. And last but not the least, definitely we try to make their profile visible to a large set of corporates by not restricting them to say only to one or two corporates like in a conventional system. They actually get opportunity to actually present their capabilities, skills, and everything to a large audience. So those are the 4 ways we generally integrate outcome linkage into our programs, and we have several such programs. So again, as Mr. Krishnan was continuously telling, that please do write back to us, and we can always we'll be happy to help, sit with you in a one-on-one consultation. And there we can actually find out the areas of collaboration in a much more good fashion.
Yeah, thank you, Sujit. Yeah, we'll just take one final question. Yeah, what are the new models of assessments which are coming up? So Abhijit, if you can take that question.
Yeah, before Abhijit, Darshan, I see some questions where some of the audience want to have a voice-based interaction. So I leave it to CII if that is allowed. We are comfortable taking those questions or even having some of the participants, voice out their question. Possibly that will be much more easier for us to answer and also for the participants to ask. But I leave it to Hariharan if that's allowed.
Yeah, Mr. Krishnan, actually, we have only a few minutes for the next session. So they can post the questions and that will be sent it to the TCS team. We are going to start the next session. So
Sure.
I request the audience to post the questions in the Q&A box. Yeah, Mr. Darshan, any more questions?
Yeah, I think we'll just take one final question.
That's why I think it's already time is out. We make it fast.
Sure. Okay, so we'll just take this final question. So what are the new models of assessments that are coming up? So Abhijit, you can take this question.
Covered, Darshan, in the last part of my deliberation that there are multiple engagements of assessments coming up, and in terms of types of questions, there are 50-60 types of questions of multiple choice, fill in the blanks, etc. Types of assessments: you can do psychometric assessments, you can do multiple choice, subjective assessments, you can do psychometric analysis. There are audio, video type questions. So the question types are multiple. So Darshan, given that limitation of time, I think if there is a question in the inquiry.tcs at TCS IN, we can respond to it more comprehensively.
Sure, Abhijit. Thanks. So would like to thank all the audience.